Okay, here we are. We're going to do another art lesson today. I'm here with Zora. I hope everybody's happy and healthy out there and doing all right in these weird times. We are here to create, here to make something cool. When you are, oh, I see we got some folks joining us. Awesome. Glad to see you guys. We are going to be making something. And when you make something, you are healing a little bit of yourself and healing a little bit of the world. So let's get into that frame of mind. Let's be very generous with ourselves. Let's not worry about making big mistakes and remember that this is just a piece of paper. We're here to enjoy. So I'm glad you're here with me. We're going to have a great time. We're going to be making trees. I want to talk a little bit about color theory and how to use these materials. Because I remember when I was a kid, I had a real hard time with watercolors. They can be a little difficult to control if you're not used to them. So let's talk a little bit about that. They usually do come with a brush, and usually that brush is pretty decent to use. Now, you can see some of my colors look a little bit dirty. If you ever have dirty colors, the reason you got those is because somebody didn't clean their brush well before they went into that color. So what I like to do is I just get a little water on a paper towel, and then I can just wipe it right out, just like that, and it cleans that first layer of the color. Also, I'm going to do my yellow. Looks a little bit green, so I'm going to get that one too. And I'm just going to get that first layer off. So the key with watercolors is we want to keep our colors transparent. In other words, we want our colors to be see-through. We want to see the white of the paper through our colors, and in that way we can actually create more intensity of our colors when we leave them more opaque, or when we can see through them less. Then our colors seem more of that color, more intensely that color. And then as we let the white of the paper show through, that enables us to lighten our colors. So we're creating kind of very delicate colors. So here we go. We have three very important colors. Those are our primaries. So that would be your yellow. Now when I get my color, you can see all I'm doing is I'm staying right on the surface. I'm not trying to dig into the color. It's not even really going to look like I have a lot of paint on there, but I'm just going to create a little yellow area. You can follow this or not. That's totally up to you. This is, definitely going to waste a piece of paper. So think of this as a test paper, if you will. Okay, I just want to make sure that everything is looking good here. So I'm going to go to my page and just make sure that all's well. Okay, so I'm going to take a little bit of yellow, clean off my brush. I'm going to get a little bit of red. Again, I just roll my brush in the paint, and here's my red area. You can see it looks a little bit pink. That's because the white of the paper is showing through. That's the idea. And then I've got blue, so I'm rolling into the blue here. Here's my blue area. When we put our colors, we want to have transparency, but we don't want it to be so wet that we're creating puddles. If you start to create a real puddle in your paper, then that means you're using too much water. The brush is like a little sponge. So what you want to do is just simply wipe your brush off on the edge of your cup here. Okay, so here we go. When I mix yellow and blue, we're going to get a secondary color. I like to start with the light color first because it only takes a little tiny bit of the darker color to change the lighter one. So I'm taking a little yellow, clean my brush off. I'm going to grab just a little touch of blue, because I don't want to overpower it, and I'm going to mix it in. And I don't know how easy that is to see, but it is turning into a green. I'll get a little more yellow and mix it. So yellow and blue is going to give us green. Yellow and red are going to mix. And this I can just sort of take a little bit of that red there. And you can see it makes orange. And then our last secondary colors will be red and blue, which will mix together and give us purple. So this here is our color wheel. Okay, every other hue, the hue is like the pure color, can be created here. So if I wanted to make a more orangey red, that would fit right in here. A more yellowy red would be over here. If I wanted like a turquoisey color, that's going to be in here between my blue and my yellow. Now you can see when two wet areas touch, it creates a bleed. So you want to be really careful of that when you are making your piece. If you want an area to bleed together or not bleed together, you have to keep those wet areas separate. Okay, now colors that are across from each other on the color wheel, that's purple and yellow, orange and blue, red and green, are called complementary colors. And what that means is that they are opposites, just like white and black are opposites. So when I put white next to black, my white is going to look more intensely light, and my black is going to look more intensely black, because they create a contrast. And it's the same thing with complementary colors. So if I put my yellow next to my purple, that's going to create a high contrast. My yellow is going to look more intensely yellow, and my purple is going to look more intensely purple. It's the same thing with orange and blue, same thing with red and green. That's why lots of sports teams have complementary colors. It's so you can see them from a distance and be able to tell one team from the other. So for example, the LA Lakers, they are yellow and purple. Denver Broncos, orange and blue. From a distance, you can tell one team from the other because of the high contrast. Now, when you mix complementary colors, something interesting happens. Like when you mix white and black, you're taking these two extreme things, you mix them together, and that's going to give us this middle thing that's not so intensely one thing or the other. It's in the middle. We call that thing gray. When we mix complementary colors, the same thing happens. Instead of these two intense colors setting each other off, we have this middle color that is actually kind of neutral. And we call that color brown. So we can even experiment with that. This time I'm going to just use, for example, red. So here's my red. And I'm just going to use the green that comes in my pack here. So I got a little green on there. And when I mix them together, let me get more green. You can see it turns into like a brown gray color. And you know, that is a really good color for shadows. So it's actually a good color to use. Or if you ever are feeling like when we're making our trees, if your green is too intense, just take a little bit of red, add it to the green, and that's going to tone that green down just a little bit. So the last thing to say is just that the way that you make green is by mixing yellow and blue. So when you mix green with red, you're really mixing red, yellow, and blue all together, which means when you mix red, yellow, and blue all together, your three primaries, you're going to end up with a brownish gray. So that's a little basic color theory. Now we're going to talk more about how to use your colors. We're going to create our tree. We're going to create 3 trees. So I'm actually going to start on the far left, and I'm going to work my way to the right. So our brushes are pressure sensitive, meaning the harder you press down, the more the bristles will spread, giving you a bigger kind of a mark, right? You can see that. As I go like this, the bristles spread. As I come up, they come to a nice point. So just by how much pressure you apply will create a bigger or smaller mark. I'm going to start with my tree trunk. So I'm using this nice round brush. I'm going to get a little bit of brown for the trunk. So I roll my brush. We tickle our paint. We're never like getting too hard with it, and we never want our brush we never want the metal part of our brush to touch our paper. So here we go. I'm going to start nice and hard here. This is the bottom of my tree trunk where the bristles are going to be big, spread out so that we have a bigger trunk. And then as I come up, I'm just bending it one way, and you can see I use less pressure. So it comes to a nice point there. And tree's branch, you can see I got a little darker with my brown there. So I'm creating a branch. And then I can create another branch. And another branch. If I want to make this a little darker, I can come in here again. So again, I don't have any puddles. I'm just going to keep creating branches. You can see with painting, the real easy part, or the thing that I think makes it easier, is that you don't have to draw the outline and then fill it in like you do when you draw. If I'm drawing a circle, then I have to start at one point and I create my whole circle like this. If I'm going to paint a circle, I can just take a big brush and just make a big blob. So I don't have to do the outline of my branches. I can just make the shape. And you can see my branches get smaller, meaning I'm pressing down less and letting my bristles stay at a nice tip, nice fine tip. And you can make as many branches as you want. If you want to add some roots. All right. So once we get to this point, I can start thinking about my leaves. Now, as I mentioned before, our leaves, or this green, is a little bit intense for me. Usually you don't see leaves quite so bright. So I'm going to take some of my green. I'm going to use my palette over here. So I'm putting a little green. I think I'm going to make it more of a yellowy kind of a green. So I'm just taking a little yellow and I'm going to mix it in with my green. And then if I want to take the intensity of that green down just a little bit, I'm going to take a small bit of red. And you can see how it sort of takes down the intensity. So here we go. Now I'm going to make some leaves. Let me move that out of the way. So when I make the leaves, I'm just sort of making the shape, leaves, little leaf shapes. Right? Definitely does not have to be all the same. I can come in, now I've got just some regular green on here that I'm adding. You can see how it bleeds into my other wet colors. And I just sort of put them wherever I think they will look good. And I think we've all seen trees kind of like this. Again, you can see I'm really just using the tip of my brush, and I'm not pressing down that hard. And I'm making it very transparent too. We can go on top of this again when it dries a little more. Let's see, I'm going to maybe create some lighter patches here, a little more yellow added. If I want, I can even, grab a little bit of orange and mix it in there and get an even different kind of fall vibe happening. And again, if I let my wet areas touch, I can get some interesting bleeds happening. So if you're finding that your paint is shiny, then you're probably getting a little bit too opaque with it. Again, you want it to kind of, it looks dull, it looks faded out. We're letting the white of the paper show through, but this is the idea. And I'll give you a little time to work on that. And then what we'll do is we'll move on to our next tree, which will be sort of a more densely packed tree. Full of leaves. All right. Whoa, Zora's got a really interesting piece going on. She's decided to make some blue and orange leaves. Can I show yours? Here's Zora's. Look at that. That is really, really cool. I appreciate the creativity that she's using there. Okay. Let's do another one. This one's going to be right by it. So I'm using, again, a little brown for my tree trunk, but maybe I can do something even a little different. I'll go some brown, and maybe I'll add a little bit of orange to it. So it'll be just a little slightly different color, just for grins and giggles. All right, here we go. Next tree. Again, I'm going to press down hard, and then I'm going to ease up on the pressure. And I'm only going to start to create just some lower branches, because this is going to be a very densely packed tree full of leaves. And then maybe I'll add like a few areas where you can kind of see through, where there's no foliage, and you can see some branches in between. Okay. Now, with this way, instead of making each individual leaf like we did in the first one, we're going to be making bundles of leaves. So more like this. There's one bundle of leaves. There's another bundle. And we can kind of play with the colors again. Going to add a little more yellow to my green here. You can see there I'm getting a little more opaque with my green. Again, for the kids out there, opaque means whether you can see through it or not. The more opaque something is, the less you can see through it. The more transparent it is, the easier it is to see through. Like a window is completely transparent. I mention it because my own daughter was sitting over here going, what does opaque mean, Daddy? Again, wet areas, when you hit them next to each other, they are going to bleed, so you want to be a little careful there. I'm going to put some leaf bundles going on behind my branches here. Maybe another one up in here. And remember, like, this is just these are suggestions. This is to give you a jumping off point so you can make your own creation and have it customized to your specifications. So, you know, if you want to make taller trees, if you want to make more trees, that is totally okay with me. I want you to let your imagination run wild and really just enjoy the process of mixing colors and, you know, brushing colors on and making shapes. So I kind of like that. All right, now we can go back in too. So, for example, I'm going to get a little more brown on my brush, so it's a little more opaque this time. And if I want to come back into this first tree, I can start to create a little bit of a texture on my tree trunk, if I choose. I can come back into my leaves once it's a little bit dry. So, for example, I think probably it's a little dry right in here, so I can come in and make some leaves like this. I see your comments, guys. Thank you for letting me know you're there. You can start to create shadows. Usually the shadow would be on the bottom if the light's coming from above, so I can start to do that if I choose. A good way to make shadows, like I said, is to mix a little bit of the complementary color. So if I mix some red in with my green and make like a brownish color, I can make some nice shadows. This one's behind. We are going to make a full scene here, but I like to kind of lay in my trees first. Okay. I'll give you guys a little more time to work on this one, and then we're going to do our third tree, which will be a palm tree, which we have out here in San Diego quite a bit. Definitely be careful. You can see I'm leaving little handprints all over my paper when I somehow dip my hand in paint. So be careful. Just sort of creating some shadows. And we could endlessly detail. It's so fun. Okay. Our third tree is going to be a palm tree. And so this one doesn't have any branches really. It's just got those fronds that come off it. So I'm just going to do one brown long trunk that gets to a point at the top, like so. Thicker on the bottom. And then the central stem of each frond is going to be kind of a yellowy green. So I'm just mixing that up in my palette area. I can kind of show that a little bit. Here's how my palette area is looking. This is the color I'm using right here. And I'm going to make, like 5 fronds that are going to come off like a hook, like an upside down J, like this. You see that? Okay. Now from here, we can use a darker green. And here's how it goes. You're going to come down each side like this. Make a little curve. You saw that I just went right behind this other tree. It's fine. And if my fronds overlap each other, that's totally okay. Let's bring that out a little bit more. That's the idea. We can go back into our tree trunk and we can make a little bit of a texture in there if you want. I like to do it like this. I go longer lines and then I do little short lines, and then longer and then little short ones like this. So you have these layers. If you do end up with like a little puddle somewhere with extra paint, you can always use that. Like I can grab paint from here and I can put it up here. Okay. Just giving some roots on this guy. So now we are ready to create the rest of our scene. I've got my 3 trees. I'm going to create a little park area. So I'm getting kind of a green, and I'm going to create a horizon. So when I come to my tree trunk, I stop and I hop. Again, stop and hop. Stop and hop. And then we can just sort of start to fill in. This is where a bigger brush is kind of nice. So I've got a little bit of a bigger brush. I'm going to make a little more of my paint color. And then I'm going to come in and carefully paint around these guys. Yeah, always use the right brush for the job. I try to use pretty much the biggest brush I can use and still have the control I need. And then if I ever need more control, then I just go down to a smaller brush. This way you're constantly like painting, you know, at a good rate. It doesn't make sense to try to fill in a large area with a small brush. Maybe around the roots of the tree I could see that, but otherwise I would just think that it would take you a long time. So that's why I prefer bigger brushes for bigger jobs. To blend colors, very easy. Just a little water on your brush with no paint, and then you just sort of go into the edges that you want to blend. I definitely want to make some shadows. Generally the light's coming from above. I'm going to use a little red mixed in with my green. It's going to give me this nice brownish color. I think I'm going to go a little greener than that. So it's just kind of like an olivey color. Then I can come in around my tree roots like this. Shadows are always darkest right next to the thing that's casting the shadow. And then as you move away, it starts to get lighter. So this is light's kind of coming from above. It's important to add a shadow because if you don't, then it looks like your tree is floating. Now your sky, you can do it however you want. I mean, you could add another row of mountains back here if you want. So maybe I'll do that like in a sort of purpley dark color back here. So here's some mountains. Again, very transparent kind of colors. It's easy to make it darker. It's difficult to get lighter with it. You can see I just went right over my handprint there. So now that is de-emphasized. We won't see that so much. And our sky, I guess since I did the shadows from above, I got to do a blue sky. If I had done it where the shadows were coming towards us, I could have done maybe a sunset sky, but I'm going to add just a little bit of green to this blue. And it's going to be more transparent towards the horizon, a little darker up at the top. Most of this is pretty dry up here, so I'm not so worried about wet areas touching. So that's nice. And I'm just going to carefully paint. You can see it's already, I don't have so much paint on my brush. It's just a little bit wet, and it's getting more and more transparent as I come down towards the bottom. And here I can just sort of let the white of my paper show through. All right. Let's go see what Zora's doing over here. Look at these trees. Wow. That is so cool. I love it, Zora. Great job. I'm just going to continue on my sky. She was wondering what color her sky should be. I don't know. Maybe you can do like warm colors, like more of like a sunset. You can put clouds in your sky. You can put birds in your sky. The only limit is your imagination. And you can see even between my leaves I can put a little bit of blue. I hope that you guys will share what you made again, because that was a really fun part of what happened last time, was just seeing all of the different creations that people made. I'm thinking what I'll do is I'll do another one of these on Thursday, and that one will be again like a drawing with pencil, because I know it can get expensive to get art materials and that it's not always so easy. Places might not even be open. I don't know quite what the limitations are in your area, but I would be surprised if there are too many of them open in our area anymore. But I'll tell you, I feel so good when I'm making something, and even if I don't really get anything else accomplished all day, I know that I made a really cool painting, and I can feel like I accomplished something. And I think that everybody likes to feel productive. I think that we can get, I can sit around and watch TV for about 2 days before I get completely disgusted with myself and have to do something else. I can't just do that all the time. I gotta get away from the screen. Although I'm so happy that some of you are on your screens looking at what I'm doing and making your own creations. So, it's got its good points. So I'm going to do a little bit more, and then I'll pretty much be done with this guy. Maybe I'll just go through the comments and make sure that everybody's good and nobody needs any help with anything, but yeah. It's looking pretty good. This is when you could go back and you could, if you want to add a few areas that are a little more intense with that color, you can definitely do that. You can go back in. These two trees are pretty similar in color, so maybe I want to just change this one over here so we can see that edge a little bit better. Light's a little bit weird on there. Sorry about that, guys. Let's see if I can... All Well, it's not looking like there's too much chatter going on out there. And I see there's just a few of you guys watching. But I hope that you will share this. If you did find value in what I'm doing and you want to help with a contribution, I would love for you to check out the Patreon page and do so. Definitely no requirement on that. The next one of these I'll do on Thursday, 10 o'clock, same time. I'm going to do the remainder of them here at my art channel. So please tune in, and hope you guys enjoyed it. Big love to all you guys. Have a great day. I will see you on Thursday. Thank you.